Vinnie, welcome to the Easy Conversation podcast. I really appreciate you joining me today and really excited to talk to you.
Excited. I got my sleeves rolled up. I'm ready to do the work. Let's get some discoveries to happen here in this next
Awesome.
few minutes that we're going to spend together. I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. And just to get started here, I know we tend to put a lot of labels on ourselves just to function in this world, but without labels, just let us know who you are a little bit in terms of what's brought you here and what you've been doing.
But I want to lead into I'm Macy's Marshalls, to quote Adam Sandler. A little fancy on the top, a little grounded on the bottom. It's funny you say that about labels, man. We try to make sense of so much stuff around us, in us. I come from a two choice household: Mets, Yankees, Jets, Giants, Nets, Knicks. I'm a real New Yorker when it came to the two sides of the conversation. Actually, I worked on a show called Hannity and Colmes on Fox News in the mid 90s when that just launched. And it was that political experience that got me over to MTV News. And
Mhm.
I've been hooked on helping people frame their stories, not change their stories. I don't think we need to change our story. We need to frame our stories. We need to be our stories. We don't need to be searching
Yeah.
for our stories. We're right here. All of that to say, I think I have some of that clarity from the trauma that I've gone through in life and the trauma I've seen other people go through that
Mhm.
I've been
Mhm.
a part of and able to help them get through. I don't know, a little bit of a media man, a little bit of a mindset man,
Yeah.
a little bit of a little bit of me and a little bit of you. That's the alchemy that makes up me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that. And what you touched on trauma. What does that mean for
Right.
you in terms of what does trauma mean? And because there's so much focus on it now, right? And we all
Yeah.
tend to talk about it, which is good because there's that liberation that comes with being able to put it out and not run from it or make it this thing about shame. But I also see it could be there's always a downside to things where a lot of the times we can create this thing and then use it as an excuse at times, which can also be debilitating. But yeah,
Mhm.
what does it mean for you? And obviously you've worked with a lot of people where they come in and sometimes there's self-doubt. They don't believe in themselves. And a lot of that can come from trauma too. But yeah,
Oh,
based
yeah.
on your experience.
It's hard to define trauma. I think I can start by defining the opposite of trauma. I'm gonna say it's the pivot. It's the choice to change directions, and trauma tends to be an external force that puts you between a rock and a hard place, and it makes you make that decision, not because you want to, but because you have to. And how
Mhm.
you react to that external force, generally speaking, usually probably not of your doing. Let's see, what did my boss at MTV used to say? It's not your problem, but it's your issue. It's not your issue, but it's your problem. Like, it's
Mhm.
not an idea that, like, it's okay. I didn't start something, but I certainly am capable of fixing or finishing
Yeah.
something. That's a reply. That's an answer. That's like the what I can be doing. What I should be doing is the pivot. What I can do is wait for trauma, man. Like, superheroes get superpowers because trauma. They get bit by a spider. They get dipped in poison, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so for me, I think that's what trauma is, a decision someone else made that impacted your life, and
Right.
how you react to that decision and how you decide to move forward or not will help you define what that trauma is, what type of trauma that is, and how, more importantly, how you react to and preact to trauma or traumatic experiences or situations in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a bit of a dance, right? Like you use the superhero analogy. I've used that quite a bit too. And in the movies, right? They have this traumatic experience. They discover this superpower that comes as a result of it. And it's how do you harness that power to
Yeah.
fullest capability and take on that responsibility? And sometimes you have that battle with the shadow. And you've shared some stories with me, even in working with talent. Like, how do you see that
Oh,
manifest in
yeah.
terms of that dance with the shadow throughout life. I
Yeah,
think that's the fun part of it, right?
absolutely. It's funny, we talk as I said, superheroes, the first image that came to my mind was Beyoncé because she certainly is like the modern day superhero now, this year, she's the modern day superhero. The economy loves her. All audiences love her. Number one black female, first number one black female ever to be in the country charts. That's a superhero right there. But
Yeah.
in the late 90s, when I was working with Beyonce, she would identify as an underdog. Destiny's Child just broke up. They were just about to get back together. I was part of the casting team at MTV that was casting a film called Carmen, a hip opera. And I know we called the label passed because apparently she wasn't quote unquote looking for solo opportunities just yet, because that's not how labels made money back then.
Yeah.
And it was her father, Matthew Knowles, who took the call. An amazing casting director that I worked for had connected with him. I went down to TRL. So backstory is I ultimately ran the talent development department at MTV, and my responsibility was finding on-air talent and casting the MTV films. And because I had access to talent and I listened, that turned into the Osbournes, Punk'd, Newlyweds, and the
Mm.
beginning part, the iterative part of reality TV. I take no blame, all credit, but no blame for where we went, what direction we went in. But I'll never forget how Beyonce identified as an underdog. People said she couldn't act, she couldn't do a film, she couldn't be in a leading role.
Hmm.
And I know for a fact, we had this conversation, I know for a fact that fueled her. I know for a fact that it was the no's and the naysayers that empowered her to show up.
Yeah.
And in her audition, which is like the highlight of my career to get to audition Beyonce for a leading role in a film, because dot a thousand reasons that I could insert into that answer right there. A magical thing happened. She read her line, she did the scene, and the director pulled me aside. For some reason, I thought I was gonna this was my moment to impress the director, like, I'm a videographer, like, being a like, that job in casting at MTV ain't impressive enough, like, this is my
Yeah.
chance to be a videographer. I'm gonna make her look great. Yes. She don't need my help, yo.
Yeah.
So, I started moving around, and he says to me afterwards, her first read, he goes, "Vin, I don't need all the fancy work. I just need you, like, literally 6 inches from her face," and he took his hand in between Beyonce's face and my camera and brought me into her space and said, "I just need to see the eye contact. That's all I need to see is the eye contact. And then let's do the scene over again." And literally, it was a walk. She walked. She literally walked from one side of the room to the other, which in the movie is her introduction to the character and to the film. And for years, I thought I did something wrong. I thought like I detracted from the glow that is Beyonce. And I realize
Yeah.
now that I was in a room with two like number one, like top 1% creators. And when you
Mhm.
have clarity, and creative clarity, you don't need to give constructive criticism and tiny little notes and line reads. When you can explain exactly what you're looking for, it allows the other person to step up. And I saw two collaborators. It was the big bang for me of pop
Right.
culture. And God bless John Singleton for letting me be in the room when that happened, and Beyonce for giving me the space to be in her space when we developed and dived into that character. I Man, that story has changed over 20 years, maybe even 25 now,
Yeah.
since I was in that room.
Yeah.
Perspective is grace, and perspective is faith reimagined, so to speak. So to be able to go back and look at what I thought I was doing for the reasons that I knew I was doing it, and then to realize what I actually got to contribute to. I got to come up with I got to be the conflict in the room that the note was given to, and we can all identify in learning from others and not fully receiving the message until years later.
Yeah.
And that to me is a trauma response. That's
Hmm.
not just identifying what happened, but identifying and working through it and working through it and working through it. And as a child, I was taught compartmentalize and disassociate. And as an
Hmm.
adult, I have emotional bandwidth to work through some of those blocks. And
Yeah.
so thanks, B. Yeah.
Well, and then the perspective piece that you touch on, right? That's so profound because in the
Mhm.
moment, it's hard to have that perspective. And a lot of the times, yeah, years later, you can look back and realize that, oh, when I thought this experience or this situation was really could have been negative, but now I see how it served me.
Yeah.
Have you been able to apply that perspective in the moment? Because for me, for example, as I've grown older, fortunately, I've been able to use that gift of perspective. It doesn't come all the time. The times when it does come, it does serve a purpose, and it just brings a sense of calm that maybe I don't need to react right now. Maybe I don't need to have all the answers.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to wait a day, or could be days or a week, whatever it is. But that being able to just accept what it is in the moment brings
Yeah.
that sense of peace.
Oh, man, to see what you have when you have it,
Mhm.
what greater gift is there than that? So many of us can relate to needing to lose something before we realize its value. Maybe we were that thing that someone lost so that we can reclaim our value. Maybe we need to
Yeah.
let go of someone or something so we can get something more valuable. That perspective is so important in casting. It was important for me because I wanted to let talent know that I saw them when I saw them. And I know
Mhm.
I had that fleeting moment to connect with them on a very high frequency to identify them as talent, traditional talent, creative
Mhm.
talent, artistic talent. The cool thing about the word talent 25 years later is that's us. Now we
Yeah.
all and anyone listening to this, we're talent. Like have talent. We have God-given talent. We have earned talent. We had to learn talent. We have burned through our talent. Talent identifies as a group of people and the skill set of a group. So the word talent really has morphed. But back
Mhm.
then, to know that I'm in the room with greatness, to be able to say, by the way, nothing but name drops since I've been on this so far. But those were the people I had access to.
Mhm.
It's a weird thing to say, but I only had access to celebrity talent at
Mhm.
MTV, and I had access to a schedule, and I can get
Mhm.
things on air, and I had access to the production and the producers and the editors and all the mixers and everybody who was part of the creative process. We weren't farming out shows the way that shows are created now and then just put
Yeah.
on air. We created all of those shows ourselves, and they
Mhm.
weren't direct paths either. So that power and permission that comes in identifying talent for me was really important. On the other hand, man, if you have a negative comment, there's no better way to share that than with grace.
Mm.
And that requires some time. And there's a little bit of
Yeah.
muscle memory involved in this also, like how you react to negative situations, how you share negative feedback. It's not easy
Mhm.
to not
Mhm.
be defensive, to not be over expletive, to not be over emotional. And I learned that if I had a negative thought and it was so valuable and I was so right, then I should keep it to myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that in time I will find a way to share that. And yeah, that goes all the way down from stubbing my toe to grief on the highest
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. I think that, but then there's a fine line there too, right? Because we touched on shame earlier. How do you determine which side you're falling on, right? To wait for the right time, or are you falling into a shame spiral where
Oh yeah.
want to keep it a secret now because of all the, at the end of the day, the root of a lot of the problems we see with people is not having that or feeling like they're not good enough, right? So how do you overcome that?
Oh yeah.
And then you touched on clarity earlier. So I want to bring that back in too. If you're truly on a path that you believe, and a lot of the times there will be doubt along the way. If you see this path that you're on, then maybe it's easier to accept those negative comments and
Yeah.
recognize that's par for the course, right?
Man, I have like full body chills on that question right now. Like it's called frisson, by the way. There's an actual word for it when your body has a physical reaction to the
Yeah.
audible world that we live in. America Ferrara had an amazing conversation about this recently, and she talked about self doubt and she welcomes it. The truth of the matter is, the self doubt doesn't happen when we walk into the room. Self doubt happens our entire lives when people tell us what we're not, who we're not, what we can't do, what we shouldn't do, that we're too dark, we're too tall, we're too this, we're too that. Self doubt in some ways is us breaking through and seeing it in the room. And when we can see it, we can call it something. I don't
Yeah.
think, and I'm horribly misquoting her, by the way, and totally paraphrasing what she said. I'll follow up and I'll give you a link if you wanna see it's
Yeah.
an inspiring, quick, short answer she gave. I'm a little verbose, so you got the storyteller guy here, so
Yeah.
Imma
It's
turn
all
it
good.
into a 30-minute show,
I love it. I
but
love it.
but that is okay to feel shame and to acknowledge it. But to acknowledge shame is the best gift you can have. To not
Mhm.
acknowledge shame and to be in it and not realize you're in it is the detriment. That's where it becomes really difficult to get out of, and we need help, we need professionals, we need loved ones, we need faith, we need energy, we need movement. So when you said, "How do you know what side you're falling on, this way or that way?" It doesn't matter because
Mhm.
we're all moving entities. I'm gonna get into the physics a little bit here. Like, we're
Yeah.
on a planet that's moving hundreds and thousands of mi we're moving, yo.
Yeah.
So to think that just because I'm uncomfortable, I need to stand still and stand in my unease. Because unlike my dogs, who at 11 o'clock will be on this side of the room and at 11:30 will be on the other side of the room because that's where the sun hits, I will sit here in my chair waiting for the sun to hit me at 11:15 every friggin' day because 'cause I'd rather be
Yeah.
comfortable in my unease than get up and be in my
Yeah.
ease. And what I learned too, and I'll just eh, now I wasn't gonna go what I learned too is that unease turns into disease, and that's when it gets toxic.
Yeah.
And surrounding yourself with people who support you and supporting people who support you. This is my mantra in life. I
Mhm.
go out of my way to work with people who show up for my community, who support my allies, who gave me the rights that I have. And I'm very sensitive about helping people who to take those rights away because we're in a weird world right now where that actually happens
For sure.
because of
Yeah.
media, because of the conversations we're starting and supporting, not just the conversations we're having. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
intentionality in that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a journey, right? To your point,
Yeah.
you're going back and forth. We don't have the answers, and I think that's the beauty of it all is not knowing and still moving, and sometimes realizing that, "Oh, I've hit a dead end here, and how can I pivot?" Like you said earlier, even when it comes to trauma, being able to pivot. But you also touched on the aspect of faith, and, I always find that interesting, and I'm always wanting to understand other people's perspectives because that helps me navigate life too. But, you touched on God-given talent, and I believe that we all have this talent.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we live in a world where it's easy to compare ourselves and again experience shame because we'll always fall short of comparing ourselves to someone else because maybe they're living there with their God-given talent and we just need to find ours. What does that mean for you? Like when you think about, okay, what's been given to me and how do I have the faith to lean into it?
Oh, I'll give you the honest answer.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of fear in faith,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yes.
I think faith for me is believing in something bigger. I actually love working with performers because I truly love being in the audience. And the
Mm-hmm.
bigger the audience, the more fun I have. When I go to actually it's a different type of energy. When I'm at someone's showcase, I'm thinking of some artists that I got to see day one in their showcase, and it's 5 people in a room. There's something magical happening there. You're crying because of potential, and that's that faith that's coming into the room. And I believe that potential is going to be so big that this person is going to fill stadiums and arenas and possibly even change and or save the economy. That's faith right there. And as I'm wrapping it up into talent a bit here too, the fear part for me, and this is something my dad is Catholic, my mom is Baptist. They met in Kansas at K-State University, and then they moved to Staten Island, where my dad is from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was actually brought up Baptist in Staten Island.
Hmm.
And I learned early as a kid that if you don't have a direction in life and you pray to God for that, and if he answers and when he answers, usually the answer is walk west, go east. Like these big, not turn on the computer and send this person an email and
Yeah.
not like a tiny little step. It's usually like a giant journey. And I felt called to figure out and do the work to figure out what my journey could be. And I didn't want to wait around for someone to have to tell me what I could do. I want to try to get it right. And I also believe that's part of the system. That's part of the plan. And some of us need some poking and prodding to get moving, and some of us are happy to stand still.
Right.
For example, as a casting director at MTV, if I want to cast 250 people in an hour, I don't go around Times Square running around like a chicken without a head. I stand still, and I let all those people come to me, and I make it clear and loud what opportunity I have and how quickly I'm able to convert that into an option of opportunity for them. And I think that has a lot to do with my processing of
Mhm.
faith and understanding how to show up with opportunity. I think I carved a unique path. Look, hundreds, thousands of people work at MTV. I think I
Mhm.
carved a unique path at MTV because I was given access to the room
Yeah.
and conversations happen in the room. I cast a VJ. We launched MTV2. It was a brand new channel. I cast VJs were hosts, video jockeys back then. I cast the VJ. Will I Am was on the show. Will came in, he had the number one video, and at the end of the show, he turned around to his manager and he's like, "Yo, this guy is like right out of college. How is he on TV for 30 minutes? I have the number one show and I get 4 minutes." He's like, "That's whack. What do I got to do to host a show around here?" And every single eyeball in that room looked at me. And I was like, "Wait, what? This is mine. I got it, guys. I'm open. I'm open. Throw it, pass it, pass it." I went upstairs and made two phone calls. I was like, "Yo, I am," said he was going to host a show. So doesn't that kind of sound cool? And isn't that a unique way to use talent? Because I'm in talent development and we're supposed to be finding new ways to work with talent. And
Mhm.
that turned into Mandy Moore being a VJ, Ashley Simpson being a VJ. I can go down the
Yeah.
list. And if you're watching MTV now, it was part of Wildin' Out, getting Nick Cannon on that channel, for graduating him from Nickelodeon to MTV. The Challenge is on the air right now still. Rob Dyrdek is hosting still shows on ridiculousness. So basically all the old guys on that channel. You can blame me for that, but like they're my brothers.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of the space that they created to stay there and invite new generations of energy into traditionally in TV. It's a dead end, those shows, they end. And there's only a certain amount of cycles and seasons they go into. But when the community shows up, and a community is much larger than the audience. A network will define an audience to its advertisers based on who their eyeballs can translate to clients or buy their products or buy their services. So the audience will change. When I was at MTV, we were 12 to 24. Now it's 18 to 24.
Mm.
So the audience will change. I always was aware of the community, and
Yeah.
rightfully so. In the 90s and early in the Y2Ks, I was representing communities on that platform. I wasn't just growing an audience, and I think that's a big reason why some of those shows are so relevant and still are impactful. In fact, I just saw on Instagram, Nick just posted that A While and Out is being honored by the NAACPs for outstanding achievement in storytelling and reality programming. And that's 20 something years later. It's crazy to think, but that's the community that did that. That's not a single audience or a single platform that made that happen.
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing. And one of the things you touched on there was the standing still. And again, that's very challenging for people, myself included, because for me, if I'm standing still, it means I'm not moving. And there's again the aspect of shame that comes with that. Maybe I'm being lazy, maybe I'm not being driven. But I've also now come to realize that I've I put in the work, and then sometimes you just have to wait for the opportunities to come to
Yeah.
you. And that's that faith part, right? But again, it's that delicate dance of knowing when to stand still and when to move. How have
Yeah.
you been able to do that for yourself? And just being around some of these people that you've mentioned and the talent you've worked with, what have you been able to adopt? Because and apply it to yourself. So what are some
Oh,
of those
yeah.
things that you've been able to pick up and
Oh, yeah.
apply?
From Mandy Moore, I learned to ask questions in the downtime. Why
Mhm.
not? It not just because I wanna know and I wanna learn and I wanna educate myself, but because I'm giving somebody an opportunity to connect with me, to
Mhm.
help me, to share with me, and you'll you never forget your first. That's the truth, man. Your first love, your first gig, your first job, your first success, your first fail, your first heartbreak. You never forget your first. That's something I lean into really deeply, strategically and intentionally. That's something that I lean into very deeply. My entire career, I'm hooked on being first. I was first for Beyonce, first for Mandy Moore, first for Diddy when he bought CBS had a show called Making the Band, and we turned it into Making the Band on MTV and launched. I got to recast Menudo like that. You don't do that type of you don't get that access to talent, and you don't get to create that type of conversation and impact. If I was jumping around from network to network, trying to
Mhm,
figure out how to grow up and get there's this philosophy of you got to leave to get higher. I didn't. I
mhm,
created something brand new at that network, and it grew the network. I launched 50 other MTV properties while I was at MTV. I took channel 20 on basic cable and we turned it into a global brand with a local product.
mhm,
And there's to me nothing more rewarding than that. So for Mandy Moore, it's asking questions in the silence. To be
yeah,
honest, also being happy with where you're at. I have this like vision I have this like flashback right now of the producers being like, Vin, we need another 30 minutes before we're able to shoot, but don't let them go back into hair and makeup because they don't need more hair and makeup. Like this idea that, oh, I have time, so let's just go in and explore and figure out and add as if we need to be doing something more. And what if, and this is from my friend Stefan Lovegrove, what if sometimes there is no action needed? What if standing still is exactly what's needed to happen? I know that if I want to make pasta, I put the water in the pan and I turn on the thing. I It's not going to get any hotter unless I stand there and wait for the water to boil.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's that process, that time, and also I'm going to bring it back to faith and just a larger awareness of the thing we're moving.
yeah,
As much as we want to stand, as much maybe someone who's listening to this is at the gym right now. Maybe they're cleaning. Maybe they're at their desk working. Maybe they're just standing still. Maybe they're traveling, but we're all moving. We're all on that journey, yo, whether we like it or not, yo.
yeah,
That's how the game is played. Ask the dinosaurs. You think they were like, oh, I don't want to do the end of the world for us? Like this, we're all moving. The life is moving around us. So accept it and be part of it. And to be honest, I brought up the dinosaurs. I'm bringing up physics, God, dinosaurs, Maron. I bring up the dinosaurs, man. No shame to them. They didn't know what was coming, but God bless. That is if that ain't inspiration to do everything you can today to make tomorrow the best day possible, then I don't know what is because we don't have control over what's happening,
right,
the trauma that's coming our way. We don't have control of those that third party external trauma, but we do have the ability to prepare, react,
mhm,
and do the best that we can, not just for ourselves, but for the world we want to be in and the world we want to leave behind. Because
right,
like what happened after the dinosaurs, there's
yeah,
a whole nother like iterative of I don't know. I'm watching all these like shows on Netflix now.
yeah,
It's so cool. I love understanding history. I love nothing is more comforting to me to focus on the future than processing the past.
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of wisdom in the past that we tend to dispense with, but
Yeah.
we can definitely take a lot out of it. There's another thing that you've said previously, not on this recording, but that stuck with me about as you were talking about doing the best you can today for tomorrow. And
Yeah.
one of the things you said for tomorrow, you're only going to be wrong once.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you want to expand on that? Because I
Oh yeah,
really love
sure.
the idea behind it, and
Oh,
I think it's
thanks.
very inspirational.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. It's my abundance theory. It's
Yeah,
how I tapped into abundance. It's where I come from. It is part of what is going to help me make decisions today is knowing that I'm promised tomorrow. And some people will sit here and say, but you're not promised tomorrow. And I'll say, nah, NUH-HUH, nah. Yeah, I am. I'll put my life on it, by the way. I'll put my life that I'm promised tomorrow every single day of my life. And I'm only going to get it wrong once and I ain't even going to be here to find out that I got it wrong. That sounds like a wonderful way to look towards tomorrow than fearing tomorrow. And I don't want to not do something because I'm afraid of what is not yet to come when I know that it will be. And there are a
yeah,
lot of other religious and philosophical. I'm not going to say what happens after that, after we get it wrong. Then we can, that's a whole different podcast episode. We could talk about that later.
yeah.
But that motivates me to do what I can,
Mhm.
not what I should is. get on social media and give thoughtful answers and support and empower my community and help guide them and help and educate and share my experiences, right? That's what I feel like called that I should do. What I can do, what I can do, like Vinnie Potestivo, Vinnie Potestivo can do, probably ask better questions because I've auditioned and interviewed hundreds of thousands of people from, unfortunately, presidents of companies.
Yeah.
I've asked some really strong questions that got really great answers. The better the question, the better the answer. We got a lot of low hanging fruit questions that are out there right now.
Yeah.
And again, that's where I think the framing of the story matters more than the telling of the story.
Hmm.
Also, we tell bad stories.
Yeah.
If this is the story economy, why are we talking about our lives? Look around. What stories survived the test of time? Biblical stories, fairy tales, superheroes.
Hmm.
Why are we talking on stories and Instagram and shorts on YouTube? Why are we talking about the mundane day to day things in our life, thinking that's the story economy? So,
Right.
to that, I want to say be the source of the story. Be the
Mm.
source. I'll talk about the Bible for a second. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, sources. They wrote their books that became the Bible, and their
Hmm.
stories were trusted and tested because of who they were. And I
Right.
can look at modern politics and say the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. To be honest, truth is just an amalgamation of facts. People
Hmm.
could change the facts. They can also omit them. That's part of what reality TV was designed to do. Create space so we can focus on a myopic topic and not be flushed and washed away by the flurry and noise of media. So I do believe that we're guaranteed tomorrow, and I'm going to bet my life on it. And I'm going to do everything I can today to make tomorrow a great place for me and the people I support and the people who
Hmm.
support me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That definitely stuck with me when you shared it the first time.
Yeah,
But
that's how we got here.
yeah, exactly.
That's our past. We've been taught. I couldn't wait to get here. I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And you touched on the biblical stories and other forms of stories. Why do you
Hmm.
think they've survived the test of time? And I see, as you were touching on Instagram stories or reels, I struggle with those because I often find there's no depth behind it. There's no, it's very simple. But yeah, why do you think those stories survive?
Yeah, let's lean into the word depth right now. What
Yeah.
happens when the ocean is deep? How much water changes in the depth
Mhm.
of that water
Right.
versus a cistern puddle of rain? How much water
Yeah.
changes in that
Right.
puddle? I
Yeah.
think the big stories have adaptability to them. We don't even know what fairy tales Disney created, Disney owns, or Disney licensed. They're just the source of storytelling, and they're not the source of, for example, The Little Mermaid. They're not.
Mhm.
I think they are the source of Lion King. They are not the source of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They are. I can go on and on. I grew up with Hansel and Gretel, and I've seen so many iterative versions of that. And
Right.
I think the great stories have flexibility. I'm like an Italian American. I'm the oldest of six. I'm the oldest in my family, so I grew up really close to my grandmother and my mother and my sister.
Mhm.
And how I did at school to answer that question would be very different to my grandmother and my mother and my sister. It doesn't make me a liar, and I'm not omitting anything by focusing on a specific fact. I think that some of the greater stories just were built with more facts and nuances and more depth to them than, as you're pointing out, than our shorts and our stories, which
Mhm.
tend to be as deep as our hand is because they're usually selfies, as long as our arms are, because they're
Yeah.
usually self shots. No disrespect to us. We're just trying. And in
Right.
fact, I want to challenge myself on that because if that mirror reflection is as deep as it can be, think about how much space we're creating behind us in those
Mhm.
selfies and in that self shot content. Just be mindful of that space that
Yeah.
we create. I love creating space. It was space that gave Jessica Simpson her ability to claim her identity back. She was not she didn't look like Whitney, she didn't look like Britney, she didn't dance like Christina. Like I can go down the list of all the things that she wasn't, by the way.
Mhm.
So when she got married, she wasn't going to be great at being what a wife is supposed to be because she was not all of these iconic things that people think are feminine and think that females should be.
Mhm.
And what MTV did was create space. We had 30-minute blocks
Right.
of programming because that's how advertising is sold. So instead of a half hour of music videos, sorry, this is where I admit that like my department was partially responsible for getting rid of music videos. Although you got to give credit to YouTube because if it wasn't for YouTube, we would still be playing. They would still be playing videos on that channel. But on
Right.
demand videos, that's what really got rid of the video on that.
Yeah.
I get a little defensive sometimes on that one. But we gave Jessica Simpson, and I love Nick Lachey and an amazing man. I'm, I'm not saying anything bad about him, but the show was created to have a larger conversation, really, from her perspective.
Mm.
And here's the proof. The proof is because back then there was no social media, so there was no real time feedback.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't share the episodes with talent until they aired. So
Mm.
season one aired of Newlyweds. Season two is where Jessica came up with chicken tuna of the sea, the sort of biggest dichotomy in reality TV of, is this really a conversation we're having? Is this really that relatable? But she saw it. She saw it in herself, and she brought that into the version of her that she wanted to become. She opened up
Mhm.
that space by accepting it and being it. That led to playing Daisy Dukes and Dukes of Hazzard, and then because of that, she got a boot deal, and because the boots did well, she got a shoe line, and the shoe line did well, she got a line at Macy's, and yo, she made her billion from herself, being
Mhm.
genuinely herself, not being all the things that the media wanted her to be. It's a hard story to learn, and it's not one that I would wish on anybody because being that vulnerable in front of hundreds of millions of people is very difficult and taxing on the soul, by the
For
way.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could tell you that for oof, that's it takes a toll, but space. It's all about
Mhm.
space. That and it doesn't cost a thing.
Right.
I was told I wasn't talented. So as a kid. So instead of going out for the arts, I became a computer programmer. Why?
Mhm.
Because I could create more space, more spreadsheets, more databases. I can create more web pages online in the digital space than I could fill a theater with my non-talent. So I was told, by the way. I did end up getting a vocal scholarship to Wagner College, and I got to that school, by the way. I was a psychology major with a vocal scholarship, and I heard that these other schools had something called arts admin. Like I wanted a business degree in theater management. I
Yeah.
drafted my major in the first semester, and it got approved, and it was funded by the second semester, and I graduated with that degree. It's all about creating space.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That definitely makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, for sure. And another thing when in terms of expanding on storytelling and you're talking about asking questions, right? In terms of
Yeah,
interviews where you were doing. And I think even now we're stuck in this world where we're often asking questions to get the answers we want to hear. But how do you ask questions where it's just, again, creating that space, right?
yeah.
Not knowing what's going to come and maybe even opening yourself up to a story that you might get out of it. How do you do that?
Yeah. So I don't forget divisiveness, intentionality, and Elmo. Okay. So divisiveness. Divisiveness is when I ask a question with the intention of getting you to land on an answer. And usually that answer will benefit me.
Yeah.
So you buy my services, so something that I benefit from. That's divisiveness. Intentionality is asking questions, knowing that, not knowing where it's going, but knowing you're capable of supporting it in the future. So my strategy in life is to be intentional. I ask questions knowing that I have the power and ability and passion, more importantly, to support the questions that I'm asking. Elmo. Elmo recently in the news made headlines because Elmo asked, "How you doing?" That's the worst Elmo impression ever. I tried. And people said, "Elmo, actually, work is really tough, and I really appreciate you asking, but my boss is a jerk, and I'm not really happy." And Emma was like, not prepared for the answer. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not true. Elmo was shook because Elmo didn't know people were going to answer that way. Elmo did a press tour.
Yeah.
I saw it on GMA, the Today Show. Elmo was on press because he simply asked, "How are you doing?" And I think that's intentionality. That's coming in and asking the question. Now, a lot of us might be intentional and not giving the answer. "Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm
Hmm.
okay." Some of us will see it as an opportunity to open up and grow and maybe even connect. Because if someone's asking the questions, what if they actually care? What if someone really wants to know, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Sometimes I get nervous. People will be like, happy birthday. And I'm like, oh, happy birthday to you too. I don't know what to say. But I'm like, yeah, 47 years on this planet. I've been waiting for that moment for you to say that. And I can now
Mhm.
see all the crap that I went through, all the wins that I've had, the losses, the successes, the series closing, the contracts ending, but all the Emmys and awards and accolades that come in a team environment. So I show up in a
Mhm.
team environment easily, no doubt about it.
Mhm.
But it's that intentionality. And
Yeah.
if you can ask a question knowing that you're capable of supporting it, and there's work to be done there. So I have a podcast. It's called I Have a Podcast. And I go back and I talk to the very people that I'm name dropping in this episode. But because I don't get to use it for networking purposes, I had to think of an intentional way to support my fellow peers, my podcasters, my podcastinistas, my podcast host and guest friends. I had to find a way to support them. So I created ihaveapodcast.com and
Yeah.
I featured podcasters because everyone always said 5 podcasts to look at. And there's always these listicles. And back in the day, you needed an article about you to
Right.
get verified. I launched this platform with the intention of supporting people. They shared it, which I thought they would do because it supported them. My domain authority. So, domain authority is something, just to get geeky. Google gives every website that's out there a grade, basically 0 to 99 or 100, let's say. Amazon 100, Google obviously 100,
Mhm.
Apple 100. My website for my agency, probably a 20. My I have a podcast.com, 80. And that means that Google trusts my website. So the content that I'm publishing from my website matters. That's
Mhm.
important to know because
Yeah.
3 years ago, if you asked me what's the most important aspect of a talent brand, I would probably say that being respected is more important than being understood. But
Yeah.
today, here in 2024, I would double down and I'll say that you need to be understood to be respected. If Bing and Google do not explicitly understand who you are,
Yeah.
and the explicit semantics of who you are doesn't match with the implicit semantics. Implicit being social media and blogs and our reputation and word of mouth, all the soft skills and soft stuff around this versus
Yeah.
explicit being like host equals Vinny, awesome equals Vinny, Vinny equals talent development, Vinny equals product development for talented leaders. That's explicit semantics. And being understood is so important if you want to show up as an opportunity and in an opportunity to make change and be part of the solution. And
Yeah.
it's a big opportunity. So explicit semantics, implicit semantics, yo. And I used to shy away from the AI conversation, but you can't. You just cannot.
Yeah.
We need to,
Right.
because we're about to be talking about this world. Like, we're talking now about what's replacing the cell phone. I even forgot the word, but what's it called that Apple has with the headset?
Oh,
Something
yeah.
about
Yeah. I don't
that
remember
word.
the name either. Yeah.
So I'm gonna mark this down. It's February 2024. We're recording. It's in my little time capsule right here, and I can't even spatial programming. I can't even
Yeah.
spatial computing is the word. Okay, so I'm glad
Yeah.
I landed on it. That's gonna rock. If we think AI rocked our humanity, just wait till humanity rocks our humanity. It's here.
Yeah.
It's not coming. It's already here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I appreciate that answer because I think we often the intentionality piece because we often
Yeah.
get attached to our views. And so how do you then detach yourself? That's one aspect of it, right? And be open to whatever you're going to receive. And I think we've been talking about
Yeah.
that throughout. From a marketing perspective, I love the answer you gave about I have a podcast.com because everyone's telling you the name of their
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah. So I love that too. But
Something we
yeah,
get to
so
share. It's something we get to share.
exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. So how do you keep yourself not attached then? And that could be probably a good place to end, but I just want to get your view on that, right? When you are being intentional, how do you find that again, that balance in terms of not being attached and keeping yourself open? And yeah, how is that?
Yeah.
Right?
I would say I'm quick to move and slow to change. I'm always happy to jump on a call and make something happen quickly, but I'm always learning. I'm always asking questions and I'm always tweaking my direction. Inertia is really important. Again, I'm going to get into the physics of the universe
Yeah.
here. Inertia is incredibly important.
Mhm.
Inertia is what I gave Wild 'N Out, is what I gave The Hills and The City and The Housewives. I'm like all these weird shows that I can come up with. Inertia, it wasn't just creating a show. Creating a show is momentum. Inertia gives it actual direction and purpose.
Right.
And there's intentionality in that. I don't It could be divisive, by the way. So a divisive version of inertia is creating something that's going to bring you back to my platform.
Mhm.
I didn't create those shows with the idea. First off, I didn't even think that there would ever be like streaming television. So
Right.
people say, "How do I get my show on Netflix?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Cast a show 25 years ago and then hope that it's socially relevant." And they just added season 9 of The Real World on Netflix, which to me as a gay man is really important because it's the one season of Real World that talked about don't ask, don't tell. And it was a
Mhm.
really pivotal, talk about traumatic as a gay man in the 90s,
Yeah.
a really in early Y2Ks, a really pivotal moment for how I developed into how I was going to have relationships. And it
Yeah.
helped me figure out who to support. It also gave me intentionality to get a certain type of person on or off the network so that they can
Yeah.
start better conversations. But I think you got to move quick and you got to change slowly and be open to new input. Input dictates the output. I'm quoting Mandy Moore. There's a whole episode on I have a podcast about it. I think episode 3. She was my 3rd episode. Input dictates the output. And when she talked about it, it was regarding I have to watch TV to make TV. I have to read the weeklies to be in the week. I have to understand the language of it all.
Right.
But what an awesome idea to apply to AI right now. People are like, "Oh, AI crawls the web," and I'm not. If you're using Chat GPT 4.0, you can create your own GPTs and you are the input. I can
Right.
upload 2,000 of my podcast guest interview transcripts and be the input to its output. And there's tremendous power in that. Move fast, change slow, and be mindful of the input because it does dictate the output. Ask
Mhm.
great questions. Create what you can, not what you should.
Yeah.
I feel really called to just push that out. Create what you can. I'm giving you permission. Permission inspires action. Action inspires confidence. Confidence inspires self acceptance. It's a tremendously positive domino effect.
Yeah.
So create what you can, not what you should. And I mean it. I'm the guy, I'm the friend that takes way more pictures than I post. My friends are like, "Oh, if you never want to see a photo again, let Vinny take it." That's what they actually say about me. Not even behind my back. They say that in front of me, by the way. No respect. I just love what I see. And you know what? Now, 20 years later, when the right platform is up, I have no problem flexing. Instagram has these like tap in, if you tap in your 20s. Yo, I got plenty of pictures from my 20s. I'm ready. I am built for this game.
So I appreciate it, Vinny. Thank you so much. I
Oh, my
do give
pleasure.
guests an opportunity to share with the listeners how they can be found online or other ways that people wanted to get in touch with you. So, what are some ways people can do that, or if they wanted to
Uh,
find your work?
Yeah, best way is to you're probably gonna hit pause or stop at the end of this episode, so just, like, meander over to this episode and give us, like, a five-star review. I'll see you in I'll see you in the comments section. I don't know, we're talking about podcasts, right? I do hang out on LinkedIn a lot. I have an open door policy, as I always have. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. My personal hashtag on LinkedIn is LinkedVin. It's a little confusing, but I thought it was smart, but I think I peaked at I have a podcast in the Osborne, so I'm gonna leave it there. But look, you're listening to this podcast, and if you made it this far, I really appreciate the energy you put into it. Meet me in the 5-star reviews. Let's make this happen. Take a snapshot of your 5-star review and share it because sharing is the action, not leaving 5 stars and not just like committing to your opinion and how you want to support this, but support this podcast. Get it out there, and I'll see you on social
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, bud.